As a mist fell on the west side of a small box canyon in North Whittier Heights, a citrus grower named John Dodrill anxiously watched the thermometer nailed to a fence post outside of his tool shed. It was just before midnight on December 31st, 1932, and the temperature was dropping. While most people were celebrating and ringing in the new year, Mr. Dodrill was tending to his valuable and vulnerable crops of lemons, oranges, and avocados. John worried that the late hour and dropping temperature could turn the light mist into a heavy frost. If that happened, his crops would freeze up and die. And like so many other citrus farmers in the area, he would have to light his frost-preventing smudge pots that warm his groves. Normally, Dodrill would have fired up the smudgies hours ago, but tonight was different. Tonight not only marked the start of a new year, but an event was about to take place that could change the citrus farming industry forever. Tonight, the area's citrus growers' attention were directed towards the Puente Hills and a mad scientist's invention that promised to control the weather. Hi, I'm John Garside, and this has to be one of the most intriguing, mysterious, and bizarre tales that I've ever stumbled across. It's been difficult to research this story because I can't find anyone still alive who remembers what happened here. And that's one of the reasons why I find it so fascinating. Behind me is a vacant piece of hillside in Turnbull Canyon, but in 1932 it was anything but vacant, and if you can believe it, a mad scientist once conducted electrical experiments right there. Kitty Hawk had the Wright brothers, Menlo Park had Thomas Edison, and Turnbull Canyon had William Haight and his Electrodome. Our story begins in Huntington Park, 1925. A road contractor named William Haight had been experimenting with alternating electrical current and its effects on the weather. We know very little about William Haight the man. He must have been a very private person. However, when it came to his weather experimentation, he was quite public about it all. Judging by his work, I can tell you he must have followed the career of Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was a brilliant scientist and inventor. He's also considered to be the father of alternating electrical current. In 1901, Tesla began construction of his greatest invention, the Wardenclyffe Tower. This tower would supply the world with free, wireless energy, communications, and you guessed it, the ability to control the weather. But in 1905, Tesla's financier, J.P. Morgan, pulled the plug on Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower.
There is absolutely no way for me to make money with this project. Tesla intends to just give away free energy, and I think that's great, but not on my dime.
Nikola Tesla nor William Haight were the first to believe they can control the weather. For centuries, man has harbored the belief that he could produce rain by bombarding the skies. One superstition is that rain is almost certain to follow a big battle during wartime. In Caesar's time, the old Roman warriors were sure that the clashing of spears against shields and the groans of the dying rising to heaven produced a storm, and that the precipitation from their exertions fell to earth again as rain. This superstition has been passed down for hundreds of years. And with the invention of gunpowder, the superstition only grew stronger. It was thought the explosions created such a disturbance in the moisture-filled clouds that rain would fall. During the drought of 1891, the United States government hired Robert Dienforth, a self-proclaimed colonel, general, and rainmaker. Robert bombarded the Texas sky with dynamite and balloons filled with explosive gases in an attempt to make it rain. He was unsuccessful and became a laughingstock. The story of rainmaking wouldn't be complete without the rather unfortunate true tale of another self-proclaimed rainmaker, Charles Hatfield. In 1915, the city of San Diego hired Hatfield to end the local drought. By setting up a series of towers topped with boiling vats of chemicals, he claimed that he could bring enough rain to fill the reservoirs. And he did. Not only did the reservoirs fill, but the rivers flooded, the dams burst, and dozens of people died. The city blamed this coincidental tragedy on Hatfield and ran him out of town. He never received a payday and has long since passed into obscurity. William Haight felt he was different. Science was on his side. In 1925, William worked closely with city governments, and he knew that Southern California cities were growing fast. The population of Los Angeles had grown by 300,000 people in the last 10 years. Southern California is a desert after all, and William knew that this population boom would greatly tax the Los Angeles area water supply. And so did the city of Los Angeles.
Unless we take immediate steps to bring in water from an outside source, the people of Southern California will be up against a serious water shortage. But we're fortunate in having within our reach a water source capable of supplying our needs. This source is the Colorado River.
So while the city of Los Angeles was constructing an aqueduct system from the Colorado River, William Haight looked to the sky. Haight was prepared to implement Nikola Tesla's theory that weather could be manipulated by shooting alternating electrical current into the atmosphere. Unlike the rainmakers who had come before him, Haight showed his apparatus freely and took the world into his confidence concerning his science and theories. This was because on April 9, 1925, he became the sole patent holder of this device. Mr. Haight explains in his own words how his device should work.
You see, it's not very complicated. The ground is negative and the upper strata of the air is positive. My apparatus must be high enough in the air to be free from the magnetic influence. This allows the positive pulsations of the alternating current to go to the ground, and the negative pulsations to go to the upper strata. This establishes what is known as a pulsating direct current between the ground and the upper strata. High-frequency alternating current goes into the insulating layer. Electrical contact is established between the positive and negative layers. The temperature drops in the clouds, causing them to condense and rain. The technique can also be adapted to produce clouds where none exist, or to disperse fog by forming clouds.
In California during the 1920s, water may have been scarce, but oil derricks were not. They were everywhere. And in 1925, Haight and his assistant Dewey Davis built a laboratory at the top of the only one in Huntington Park.
We made the first test on a perfectly clear night, and after a 30-minute run, a small donut-shaped cloud between 500 to 600 feet in diameter formed above the electrode. The night was very still. There was practically no breeze blowing, and the cloud remained suspended directly above the tower at a height of about 1,500 feet. As soon as we shut off the power, the cloud began to evaporate, and in 30 minutes, it vanished completely.
For his invention to work properly, he would need more towers and the necessary equipment for the rain-making stations. Each tower would need the following: a gas engine generator, 7 condensers, a transformer, and a high-frequency coil. But more importantly, he was going to need a financial backer.
The greatest difficulty we have is the insufficiency of apparatus. There should be 6 to 8 towers working simultaneously to gather a large cloud area. This will cost about $1,800 to run. This is a trifling expense. Hopefully they'll do the trick.
But first, William had to prove that just one device would work. More tests would have to be made, and over the course of the next 6 years, that's exactly what William did. For the press, covering this story was a no-brainer. It was a strange science fiction story that was unbelievable. The headlines gained some national exposure and caught everyone's eye. In mid-1931, news of William Haight and his device spread to Russia, where a Russian electrical engineer and author named B.B. Kaczynski took notice of William's work. Kaczynski represented the Soviet government in agricultural electrification projects. Haight's experiment sparked the interest of Mr. Kaczynski and the Russian government. Patent or not, the Russian government was now making their own device. William Haight was now in a race against the Soviet government to be the first to manipulate weather on a grand scale. For this, William Haight looked eastward to the citrus groves of the San Gabriel Valley, more specifically, the citrus groves of North Whittier Heights. The North Whittier Heights flatlands were among the best citrus-producing areas in the state. However, the crops suffered in the dry California summers, and they fell to disease when wintertime frost would wither the citrus right off of the branch. Plus, the Puente Hills were covered in abandoned oil derricks, and the summit of Turnbull Canyon would elevate his device by an extra 1,000 feet. By 1932, a man named R.R. Richards, a wealthy bridge player from Detroit, liked Mr. Haight's device and agreed to financially back the project. Mr. Haight proposed his unusual plan to the community of North Whittier Heights. The Citrus Association was excited and open to new ideas. Nearly anything sounded like a better option than expensive sprinkler systems or the filthy and more commonly used smudge pots. William had claimed an abandoned oil derrick at the very summit of Turnbull Canyon, located northwest of the Singing Kettle Tea House. He planned to improve upon the Huntington Park design. This time, the roof of his lab would be dome-shaped, allowing the bolts of alternating current to reach further out and in all directions. On the ground below is located a workshop where Haight and Davis construct portions of the apparatus. Reached by a narrow ladder, the laboratory was perched 125 feet in the air. Once inside, the housing was thoroughly insulated from the tower itself. It would take the better part of a year to construct the new laboratory, or as William was now calling it, the Electrodome.
When the apparatus in the Electrodome is working at full strength, everything metal in the room is charged with electricity. For instance, a finger placed near a clock hanging on the wall will bring a spark between the finger and the metal. Even nails in the wall, when touched, will give a slight shock. While the dome is active, extreme care should be taken while moving about.
Haight announced that he would turn on his invention and display its abilities for the first time at midnight on New Year's Eve. Haight expected to influence a 3-mile radius from the Turnbull Canyon site. In 1932, Haight was not without his critics. Dr. Ford Carpenter, one of the nation's foremost meteorologists of his time, had this to say.
I've heard of dozens of rain-making devices, but I don't know of one that really works. And I suspect this latest scheme will fall into that category as well.
Well, one thing was certain. The Russian government believed it would work. So much so that they even organized a department for the production of rain and snow. But there still hadn't been a report of a successful test of their device. The Electrodome had better work. Unless some scientific organization or good angel came to his assistance, this was the end of the line, because Haight had reached the end of his financial resources. Citrus growers from Hillgrove to Puente were watching the dark and distant silhouette of Turnbull Canyon. They were told to watch for a light in the sky, and as John Dodrill looked down at his watch, it was midnight. The time for William Haight to throw that switch had arrived. After that, the only other information I can find on William Haight is from 1934. One night while driving home, he had a blowout, and while William changed his flat tire, a drunk driver lost control of his vehicle and smashed into William's car, killing William instantly. William was dead, and I didn't know what happened to the Electrodome. The story couldn't end like this. There had to be more. I needed to find out what the Russians did with Haight's technology. And if you can believe this, the Russian government still uses Haight's technology to this day. It's believed that a Russian facility called Sura can manipulate the weather anywhere on the planet. However, Russia isn't the only country with a facility like this. Both the United States and Japan have similar facilities. Most recently, this technology fell into the hands of a company called Australian Rain Technologies, and for the right price, they'll make it rain just for you. And as I looked deeper into this corporation, I discovered that an Australian politician has been giving millions to Australian Rain Technologies to help them fund their rainmaking research. And as if this story couldn't get any stranger, this politician's name is Malcolm Turnbull. What does any of this mean? Probably nothing. In my research, I may not have discovered officially what happened that night. But what I've learned is William Haight was a very passionate man when it came to his work, and he had come too far to stop now. Mr. Haight had an appointment with destiny that night. I know he threw that switch and put on a light show that the La Puente Valley hasn't seen since. Getting to the bottom of a story or myth can be an adventure in itself. If you have a mystery you would like to solve, I suggest you find out for yourself. Discover the information you're looking for at your local library today.